What's the most chaotic thing that ever happened to you at a hotel? I checked into a boutique hotel where the boutique part was mostly vibes and a lobby plant with survivor's guilt. The hallway smelled like grapefruit and mystery. My room sat directly across from the ice machine, which coughed like an asthmatic dragon every 15 minutes. I told myself I could sleep through anything. Confidence is a lullaby until it isn't. At 2:41 a.m., the fire alarm decided to duet with a saxophone in a blender. Doors flew open. People flooded into the hallway in hotel robes, an army of belted clouds blinking at emergency lighting. A man with a room service tray used it as a shield. A woman wore slippers that said his and hers on both feet like a philosophical statement. We evacuated into the street where the night manager stood holding a goldfish in a mason jar. "Our lobby feature," he said. The fish judged us with ancient eyes. A firefighter announced it wasn't a fire. Someone microwaved a cinnamon roll with the foil still on. The culprit, a bridesmaid with a tiara at a 30-degree angle, raised a hand. I thought foil was, like, microwave gold. The crowd applauded her honesty like a supportive cult. We returned inside to discover the alarm had traumatized the keycard system. None of the doors recognized us. The night manager balanced a laptop on the goldfish jar and reprogrammed cards while the fish swam slow circle 8s. My cards still failed. He escorted me with a master key, except it wasn't my room. Two strangers in matching robes stared like we were delivering room service and trauma. We backed out, apologizing in stereo. Elevators developed a personality, refused to stop on odd floors in solidarity with the alarm. I hiked. On 3, a groomsman sleepwalked with a champagne flute and a toast. "To love," he told a ficus. On 5, a kid asked me if we'd died. "Only socially," I said. He nodded like that made sense. At 4 a.m., the hallway smoke door wouldn't latch, so it thunked every few seconds like a heartbeat in a haunted mansion. Housekeeping tried to tape it, the tape gave up. A man from 512 emerged with a violin and softly played "Everything's Fine," not a song, it felt like one. The night manager, still holding the fish, passed out earplugs from a bowl labeled Zen. The fish looked proud. At 5:10 a.m., the couple next door had a whisper fight about whose idea the cinnamon roll was. At 6 o'clock, we tried to become a society again. The elevator returned to democracy. I showered in water that alternated between glacier and tea kettle like it was debating. I found a mysterious minibar charge for artisan almonds I had not met. I called the desk. "Those are aspirational," the clerk explained. "They appear on every bill and disappear when challenged." I challenged. The almonds ascended. Breakfast aimed for redemption. A waffle robot the size of a copier and chef's eggs, which remembered the 80s. The waffle robot froze mid-extrusion. A child named Tyler pulled the emergency lever and decorated the floor in a battered Jackson Pollock. The line cheered. The goldfish arrived in his jar to supervise. The night manager called it community art. On my way out, the elevator stalled between 2 floors for 3 long breaths and then decided it believed in us again. At checkout, the manager gave everyone a coupon that read "free late checkout, retroactive," and a sticker, "I survived the boutique experience." I framed the coupon because nothing says resilience like a benefit you can't use. Weeks later, an automated survey asked, "How was the ambience?" I wrote, "Grapefruit chaos, judged by a fish." 5 stars for honesty. What's the most ridiculous rental car experience you've had? I reserved economy or similar, which apparently includes 12-passenger choir van. The compact aisle was a ghost town except for a white behemoth with tinted windows and the vibe of a church field trip. The attendant said, "Great visibility." It also had a steering wheel the size of a hula hoop and cup holders for a small congregation. The key fob labeled doors I didn't know vans could have. I pulled onto the highway and the GPS immediately chose fiction. The screen showed my van drifting through fields like a cereal commercial. It urged me to turn left onto unnamed road, which was a river. My phone paired as CarPlay, Bus Edition, and addressed me as Captain. The lane keep assist vibrated every time a breeze existed. A crosswind near mile 85 made the dashboard flash every symbol like a slot machine that owed someone money. I turned off the bells, the van sighed like, finally, a leader. Parking became theology. I attempted a cafe stop. The patio audience watched as I circled, measured, prayed, and ultimately parallel parked via hope and a 3-point turn that was actually 7. A man clapped. A toddler saluted. Inside, I rewarded myself with a croissant and discovered a sticky note on the dash from a previous renter. Name her Agnes. She likes 55 miles per hour and encouragement. I whispered, "You got this, Agnes," and the engine purred in approval, psychosomatic, but still. Fueling up, the gas cap hid behind a panel that required a secret handshake. I approached a teenager at the next pump. "Do you know how to Agnes?" he asked, like we were discussing a celebrity. He popped the latch with a pinky and returned to his life. I bought windshield wipes and a keychain that said Captain. Then tolls. The transponder was set to vacation mode, which is a setting where it observes, judges, and does nothing. A robot on the phone asked for my license plate. Agnes had a temporary paper tag tucked behind glass like a shy ghost. I read the VIN. The robot said, "Great. Connecting you to boats." I hung up. Later I discovered a stack of toll-by-mail envelopes in my mailbox like Agnes had sent postcards from every bridge. The van's radio found a trucker's channel. I listened to strangers narrate storms and snack preferences while I white-knuckled a merge that felt like steering a bungalow into traffic. At a scenic overlook, tourists asked if I could give their group a ride 2 miles. "I am not a bus," I said, to the bus. I took a selfie with Agnes. She looked majestic against the mountains, a land whale at peace. Returning her should have been simple. The rental lot funneled vehicles into a conga line where you leave the key and confess your sins. An agent scanned my contract, regarded Agnes, and asked, "How many souls?" "Just mine," I said. He nodded solemnly, printed a receipt that read economy or similar, satisfied, and upgraded my customer profile to driver large objects. I don't know what that entails, but I feel seen. 2 weeks later I received a postcard from the company with a photo of Agnes under a rainbow. "Thanks for caring for our 12-seater." I laughed out loud in my kitchen. Confidence, I've decided, looks exactly like a giant van piloted by a single overcaffeinated captain whispering compliments to dashboard plastic.
What's the wildest tour or excursion mishap you've had? Our city walking tour began with a cheerful guide, a tiny flag, and a promise of hidden gems. 10 minutes in, we merged with a wedding procession because the bride's cousin also had a tiny flag. Both flags waved with identical confidence. Our guide squinted, shrugged, and whispered, "We're pivoting to cultural immersion." We flowed into a courtyard where a string quartet attempted "Sweet Child O' Mine" with tender solemnity. The father of the bride pinned a boutonniere on me like I was a late uncle, then pushed me toward a buffet where mushrooms wore tuxedos made of breadcrumbs. I ate one because hospitality is a calling. The bride hugged me with wholehearted recognition of a relative she'd never met. I hugged back with the energy of a man living an improv prompt. Our guide realized the error when the officiant launched into a language none of us had selected on the tour website. He attempted an extraction with the stealth of a brass band. We almost made it until the DJ hit a group dance. A woman in a glitter dress pointed at our cluster and made the universal motion for "You're in." Reader, we were in. We grapevined like citizens. We clapped like tax filers. The grandmother shouted, "Again," and we agained. Eventually a second flag appeared, our original guide sprinting toward us like a rescue helicopter. Apologies were exchanged for 2 slices of cake and a commemorative napkin. We slipped through a side gate and found ourselves at a museum of spoons, not on the brochure, because our scheduled cathedral had closed for a private ceremony. Guess which one? The guide improvised magnificently. "This," he said, lifting a ladle with reverence, "is a miracle of soup." The audio guides rebelled. Mine kept switching languages and informing me, with great passion, about agricultural reforms in a different century and country. I nodded thoughtfully at a teaspoon. A child from our group asked if weddings often included spoon museums. Historically, yes, I lied. We continued past a fountain where a stray dog found a fountain coin and became briefly wealthy. Our guide taught us to toss a coin over the shoulder for luck. I missed the water and hit a mime, who acknowledged the coin with a slow nod like, "Good throw." Later we passed the original courtyard again. The bride saw us, waved her bouquet, and sent the flower girl to deliver leftovers in a foil swan the size of a triumphant duck. "Family is whoever dances," the uncle said, pressing a container into my hands. At the end of the tour, our guide handed out discounted postcards of the Spoon Museum, foreclosure. I tipped him 50% for choreography and crisis management. 2 weeks later I received a Polaroid in the mail of me grapevining next to a glitter dress. On the back, "Thanks for being there, love, strangers." What's the most unhinged thing a vacation neighbor did at a resort? At an all-inclusive resort, my neighbor ran a 6 a.m. pool chair militia. He wore a whistle and cargo shorts with so many pockets they deserved their own keycard. Every dawn, he placed towels with military precision and laminated claimed signs featuring clip art of a saluting flamingo. The lifeguard called him General Lounger. The rest of us called him Sir, unintentionally. He knocked on my door at sunrise with a map of the pool like it was a war room. "We've lost territory to the Australians," he said, pointing at a constellation of sun hats. They arrived with a tactical esky. I told him I had no dog in this sunchair fight. He pressed a towel into my hands like a draft notice. "You do now." By 9, the towel arms race had consumed the resort. People deployed decoys, flip-flops arranged as scarecrows, novels sacrificed as sandbags, a pool noodle formed into a question mark that looked deeply accusatory. A rival faction formed, the Shade Collective, who moved umbrellas 5 degrees every hour like vengeful sundials. A child built a moat around their family loungers and charged a toll in gummy bears. The general convened the umbrella accords at the swim-up bar. We signed with tiny pens attached to sunscreen bottles. The Australians countered with diplomacy, a floating crocodile named Neville. Neville drifted between factions wearing sunglasses. Morale softened. Someone started a sunscreen library, take a pump, leave a pump. A DJ on the opposite side of the pool defected to our side with a playlist called Ceasefire Jams. Then karaoke night arrived. The general performed My Heart Will Go On like he was launching a towel navy. At the key change he put his hand on his chest and looked at the horizon. People cried because emotion plus rum equals art. The next morning, he slept in and lost his preferred spot to a family of 5 who merely existed earlier than him. He accepted defeat with dignity, declared a ceasefire, and invited the Australians to beach volleyball. They gently obliterated us and bought everyone piña coladas. The Shade Collective rebranded as the SPF Fellowship and shared zinc like communion. On day 4, a storm rolled through. Umbrellas bucked. Towels took flight like fabric albatrosses. The general formed a rescue line, and for 10 glorious minutes we were less militia, more community, catching flying chairs, returning hats to heads, applauding each saved paperback. Afterward he gave a little speech about how territory is temporary but sunscreen is forever. We cheered because we were sun-tired and his whistle was persuasive. On my last morning I found a laminated card under my door, "You are a valued member of Pool Section B, hydrate. Reapply. Believe." I kept it as a bookmark. When life feels chaotic, I remember the general, Neville the crocodile, and an umbrella treaty that made 18 strangers behave.
What's the funniest travel misunderstanding that spiraled out of control? At a charming cafe abroad, I tried to order tea with the fluency of a brave toddler. I aimed for black tea. I said, "Black chandelier." The barista blinked and asked what wattage. I panicked and attempted a hand gesture for regret. She slid me a chocolate cake as a peace treaty. I agreed because chocolate is a universal language. Later at a street market, a vendor typed 15 on a calculator. I, wanting him to know I comprehended numbers, typed 150 to demonstrate I understood zeros. His eyes sparkled with respect and perhaps early retirement. A teenager nearby in perfect English said, "You're doing amazing, sweetie." We corrected course. I paid 15. The bowl and I are now in a committed relationship. Metro signs taught me humility. Mind the doors read as Mind the choirs, which made the sudden surge of a cappella less shocking when students boarded and sang a song about bread. A tourist asked if that happens often. Constantly, I said, with the authority of a local liar. My ticket, intended for Zone 2, confessed to being Zone 17. A grandmother gently guided me to a machine and chose the correct zones like a sorcerer programming a golem. I sought a souvenir store to buy a tiny wooden house. I asked for house and produced a noise that landed somewhere near husband. The shopkeeper lit up and introduced me to his cousin. We shared a laugh that involved no words and several gestures that looked like charades for "ma'am no." He sold me a beautiful tiny house and threw in a tiny ladder for ambition. The pinnacle of chaos occurred at a design shop where I tried to ask if they sold pendant lamps. My translated phrase suggested I wanted to adopt a lamp and possibly enroll it in school. The clerk, kind beyond reason, gave me a brochure for an artisan co-op and a pamphlet about electrical safety. I bought a postcard of a chandelier and whispered, "I'm sorry," to it. I tried to tip at a cafe where tipping was not a thing. The barista slipped the money back into my pocket like a magician doing ethics. At an ATM, I accidentally withdrew an amount that looked harmless in my home currency and prestigious in theirs. I returned the extra cash to the bank teller with a novena of apologies. She stamped a form and said in English, "First week?" I nodded. "Welcome," she said. I nearly cried from bureaucratic kindness. On my last day, I saw a street performer wearing a jacket patterned like my lost luggage. I shouted something that translated to, "That jacket is my suitcase." The performer handed me 3 scarves, a balloon dog, and the sudden awareness that my bag was probably somewhere productive. 2 days later, it arrived at my hotel with a note from the airline, "We gave your luggage a tour." It had more stickers than my passport. By the end, I learned 3 phrases that solve most travel problems: please, thank you, and I am trying. People were wonderful the second they saw the trying. I still think about the chandelier tea I never ordered. In some other timeline, I'm sipping it under perfect lighting, fluent and fearless. In this one, I have a tiny wooden house, a corrected Metro card, and a story about how kindness translates even when you don't.
What's the weirdest thing a stranger did on a long flight? I boarded a red-eye next to a man wearing a neck pillow that looked like a lobster. He introduced himself as aerodynamically shy and asked if I preferred quiet mode or narrated journey. I chose quiet mode. He nodded solemnly and handed me a laminated card that said silent agreements with check boxes like armrest truce, no elbow feints, and mutual headphone respect. I ticked them all because laminated confidence is contagious. We took off. 10 minutes in, he produced a tiny rake and created a Zen garden in his tray table using sugar packets and the salt from his pretzels. "Turbulence art," he whispered, raking delicate lines. When the seatbelt sign dinged on, he adjusted the pattern to reflect uncertainty. The turbulence smoothed. He smoothed the lines. I began to suspect cause and effect. "Mid-flight," he announced to me in a whisper, "I will be offering a silent stretch class." He stood in the aisle and led 3 rows through Tai Chi adjacent cloud worship, moving like a man trying not to wake a sleeping cat. The flight attendant paused, assessed the vibes, and joined in for a shoulder roll. A toddler copied us with the ferocity of a tiny CO. The stretch concluded with everyone patting the overhead bin like a congratulated loaf of bread. Then he unveiled a travel library, a ziploc of tiny books, micro-essay collections, a short story folded like origami, a guide to identifying clouds at night. Mostly theoretical. He encouraged us to Borrow, don't dog-ear. A college student across the aisle asked if she could trade a sticker for a poem. He accepted and placed the sticker on his lobster pillow, where it read "You're doing great," as if to the entire cabin. At hour 3, he reached into a pocket and said, very matter-of-factly, "I will now commence emotional support citrus." He peeled 6 clementines with surgical serenity and silently offered slices to our row like communion. The citrus cut through the recycled air like a hymn. Even the grumpy guy in 14C took 2 and nodded in truce. He wasn't done. From his backpack, he produced binoculars, tiny theater ones, and peered out the window into infinite darkness. "I'm birdwatching at 35,000 feet," he whispered. "So far I've identified several impressive clouds." The student giggled. The flight attendant returned with a cup of water and asked if he wanted birdseed. He accepted gravely and ate peanuts like a naturalist. The seatbelt sign dinged again. The Zen garden became modern art in one jolt. He did not flinch. "Impermanence," he said, and then used a napkin to restore order with monk-like patience. He offered me the rake. Reader, I raked. It was deeply calming to draw neat lines while a metal tube hummed through a sky with opinions. As dawn approached, he organized the Great Pen Exchange. He'd noticed everyone filling out customs forms and distributed pens he'd rescued from past lives, banks, hotels, a dentist named Larry. He collected them afterward like baby birds returning to a nest. When the kid in 15D dropped her form, he executed a Madeira paper catch so smooth you could hear the cabin's collective. "Whoa!" The mom mouthed thank you. He bowed like a librarian at closing time. We began our descent. He pulled out a roll of blue painter's tape and, with great care, labeled our overhead bin. "Community." He asked the flight attendant if there was a rule against labels that promoted kindness. "If there is, I'm ignoring it," she said, placing a smiley face sticker next to it. Upon landing, he held up a new laminated card, deplaning code of honor. "We zipper merge. We don't body check. We remember everyone's in a rush to the same nowhere." People actually followed it. It was like a flash mob of decency. We moved with grace rarely seen outside time-lapse nature films. At the gate, he turned and whispered, "Thank you for flying with my better self," handed me the tiny rake as a souvenir, and disappeared into the crowd like a very polite cryptid. Later, unpacking, I found he'd snuck an extra clementine into my bag. The sticker on it said, "You're doing great." I kept the rake on my desk. On stressful days, I push a salt packet back and forth and remember a stranger who decided that a plane could be a kinder place with nothing more than laminated cards, citrus diplomacy, and a lobster pillow that believed in me.